Hey everybody, we are going to be backtracking a little bit this week just because it's been so long since we went over this topic. And at the end of the week, you are going to be taking your final assessment on time. So we wanted to make sure that you were fully prepared, and we are going to go ahead and go back to the first lesson that we went over with time, and that is determining elapsed time between two analog clocks. So if we look at our first slide, our goal is to determine how much time has passed from one clock to the next. So our first step is going to be to determine the time on each clock. And if you remember from last week, I made a video on just determining the time on an analog clock. And so remember, the first thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at the minute hand, because that's going to give us a clue as to what hour or we are in. So if you look at this clock on the left, our longer hand is our minute hand. You can see it's not quite on the 3 yet. So we're going to start by counting by 5. So we have 5 here, 10. We're not going to go down to 15 because our minute hand has not touched the 3 yet. So we're going to go back up to the 2. That's 10 minutes, 11, 12, 13, 14. So our minute here is 14. And that we know is early on in the hour. So you can see here, looking at the shorthand, the hour hand, it's just past the 3, which means it has touched the 3, and which also shows us that it has not touched the 4 yet. So we are still in the 3 o'clock hour. So the first clock, the time of that is 3:14. Now we need to determine the time on the second clock, so we're going to go through the same steps. We're going to first look at the long hand, the minute hand, because remember that gives us a big clue as to what hour we are in. Just helps us determine how far we are into the hour and how close that hour hand is going to be to the next hour. So you can see with this one, the minute hand is directly on the 6. And so for a lot of us, we know that that's a easy point to remember because it's halfway through the hour, which means it's 30 minutes. But for those of us that still need a little bit more practice, we're going to start at the 1, and we know that that 1 is equal to 5. So then we'll count by 5s: 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. So because it's directly on the 6, that means that the minute of this clock is 30. And so since it's 30, that means we're halfway through the hour. So you'll see that the hour hand has moved in between the 3 and the 4, which again means that it has been on the 3, it's touched the 3, it's past the 3, it's getting closer to the 4, but it hasn't touched the 4 yet. So it cannot yet be the 4 o'clock hour, which means we are still in the 3 o'clock hour. So the time here is 3:30. So our first time is 3:14, and our second time is 3:30. And our goal today is to figure out how much time has passed from this clock to this clock. And so we're going to be using the subtraction method for this time. And so our second step is going to be to stack, attack, and then subtract. So we're going to be placing the bigger time on top of the smaller time. So you see here I put 3:30 on top and then 3:14 on the bottom. And as you can see, and remember, we always start subtracting in the ones place. And so since I have more on the floor, the 4 is bigger than the 0, that means I'm going to have to do some borrowing. So I'll switch over to my next slide, and you can see here I borrowed from the 3, brought that over to the 0, which makes it into a 10. And since I took 1 away from the 3, that means this is now a 2. And so I just go ahead and subtract. 10, take 4 away is 6. 2, take 1 away is 1, and 3, take 3 away is 0. So that gives me my time of 16 minutes that have passed. So my answer for this one is 16 minutes. So it's as easy as just determining the time, putting the bigger number on top of the smaller number, and doing some standard subtraction. But you all should remember that there is another way we can go about it, which is using the number line method, which we've been using a lot lately. So our first step is going to be, again, just to simply determine the time on each clock. And so our times are the same. I haven't changed the clocks. But what we're going to do instead of stacking and attacking is we're going to just draw ourselves a number line, and we're going to put the start time or the smaller time on the left-hand side of the number line. And then our next step is going to be to hop by easy numbers until we get close to the end time without going over. And so the lucky part about this question is that our time ends with an easy number. And so you can see here, we start hopping by 10. We get to 324 when we add that 10. And so if I added another 10, that would have made me go over my time. So I hopped by a 5, which got me to 329. And then I just knew that I was 1 away. So that was simple for me. So we knew that we ended at 3:30. And so now some of you might think we're finished, but we're not. How do we get our answer? And so that's what leads us to step number 4, which is we have to add all of these times. Everything that we hopped by, we have to put together, and that's where we go ahead and we get our 16 minutes. So you can see with either with either method, the open number line or the stack and attack subtraction, we get the same answer. And so now I would like you to try. So go ahead and pause the video, choose a method, either the stack and attack subtraction or open number line, and tell me how much time has passed. And so now that you've had some time, I went ahead and I chose the stack and attack. So our first thing I did was I determined the time on both the clocks, 2:20 for this one and 2:43 for this one. I put 2:43 on top of 2:20. Lucky for me, I didn't have to do any borrowing this time. I did 3 minus 0, which is 3, 4 minus 2, which is 2, 2 minus 2, which is 0, which tells me that 23 minutes have passed. So if you guys have any questions, make sure you come check out my office hours at 12:35. Otherwise, go ahead and get started on that worksheet for today.